It was a stormy Friday night, the kind that seemed made for spooky stories and whispered secrets. 4 friends, Mia, Jake, Lily, and Sam, gathered at Mia's house for a sleepover. The power had already flickered twice, casting eerie shadows across Mia's living room as the rain beat against the windows. In a fit of boredom, the group turned to Sam, the self-proclaimed paranormal expert of the group, for entertainment. "Have you ever heard of the mirror game?" Sam asked, eyes gleaming with excitement. Everyone shook their heads, leaning in. "It's an old ritual. They say if you play it right, you can see a glimpse of your future." "Like fortune-telling?" Jake scoffed. "Sort of," Sam replied. "But this one's different. You're supposed to see, well, a reflection of what's coming. Just a brief vision." Mia shivered, both intrigued and nervous. "Let's try it." After a quick search, they found an old oval mirror in the attic, covered in dust. Mia set it in the center of the living room, and they all gathered around it in the flickering candlelight. "All right," Sam said, his tone turning serious. "To play the mirror game, we have to each stare into the mirror for exactly 1 minute, then close our eyes. When we open them again, we're supposed to see a reflection of ourselves from the future." "Sounds ridiculous," Jake muttered, though his voice lacked conviction. One by one, they took turns sitting in front of the mirror, eyes locked on their own reflections. Each one saw nothing unusual at first: a nervous smile, wide eyes, a hint of uncertainty. But when they closed their eyes and opened them again, each saw a fleeting, horrifying image in the glass. As they described what they saw, a sense of dread filled the room. Mia went first. She closed her eyes, and when she opened them, her reflection had changed. Her face was gaunt, her skin pale, and her lips were tinged blue. A twisted grin was frozen on her face, and her eyes were wide with terror, as if she'd taken her last breath. She gasped and looked away, trembling. Next was Jake. After he closed his eyes and opened them, his face in the mirror was streaked with blood. His neck twisted at an unnatural angle, as if something had broken it. He laughed nervously, shaking off the fear, but he couldn't hide the unease in his eyes. Lily went third. She closed her eyes and opened them to see herself staring back with sunken eyes, her body soaked and covered in wet, slimy leaves. Her lips were pale, and water dripped from her mouth, like someone pulled from the bottom of a lake. She pulled back, shuddering, her hands shaking. Finally, it was Sam's turn. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and opened them again. His face was contorted, his mouth open in a silent scream, his hands clutching at his chest as if trying to pull something off him. The terror in his eyes was raw and all-consuming. He scrambled back from the mirror, his face pale. The room fell silent. Each friend looked around nervously, too shaken to laugh it off. They tried to distract themselves with movies and games, but the images lingered, casting a dark shadow over the night. Then, around midnight, things started happening. Mia was in the kitchen, getting a snack, when the lights flickered again. As she reached for a glass of water, she felt a sudden, icy grip around her neck. She gasped, choking, her lungs burning as the air was forced from her body. She dropped the glass, shattering it, and the others ran in, only to find Mia sprawled on the floor, gasping for breath, her face pale and her lips tinted blue. The image she'd seen in the mirror had almost come true. The friends were panicked now, their earlier laughter and jokes a distant memory. They tried to leave, but the storm outside had knocked down a tree, locking the front door, and every attempt to call for help failed. The phone lines were dead. Jake, determined to keep everyone calm, tried to act as if nothing had happened. But as he paced nervously, he slipped on the broken glass Mia had left. He tumbled backward, his body twisting as he fell, and with a sickening crack, his neck snapped. He lay there, eyes open, staring blankly as the blood trickled from a cut on his forehead, just as he'd seen in the mirror. Mia and Lily screamed, clutching each other in horror, but Sam grabbed them, his face filled with terror. "We have to stay together," he shouted, dragging them toward the living room. But Lily, feeling faint, backed away, her mind filled with the image of her reflection, soaked and covered in leaves. She could still feel the clammy wetness of her own skin. Panicked, she broke free from the others and ran toward the backyard, hoping to find a way out. But as she stepped outside, she slipped on the rain-slicked grass and tumbled down the hill into the murky pond at the edge of the property. She struggled, gasping for air, but the mud and tangled weeds pulled her down. Her screams were swallowed by the cold water. Now it was just Sam and Mia huddled together in the dark living room. Sam's heart pounded as he remembered his own reflection, the silent scream, the invisible force crushing his chest. "I don't want to die," he whispered, his voice trembling. But a heavy pressure suddenly pressed down on his chest. He gasped, clawing at his shirt as if something were suffocating him. Mia watched in horror as he collapsed to the floor, his hands frozen in a desperate grip at his own chest, his face contorted in terror, the exact reflection he had seen. Mia was the last one left, alone in the darkened house, her friends gone. She stared into the mirror, the candlelight flickering as she looked at her own reflection, her lips trembling. Her reflection stared back with empty, lifeless eyes, the twisted grin creeping across her face. And as the candle went out, she could feel that same cold smile tugging at her own lips, her breath growing shallower until there was nothing left but silence. When Mia's parents returned the next morning, they found all four friends lying motionless around the shattered mirror, each frozen in the terrifying expressions they'd seen, as though trapped in their own reflections forever.